There you go. So all we're doing tonight is just it's a little bit of housekeeping. It's a bit of an introduction, a recap, just going through the things we need to know to be successful at umpiring. So it's more than just knowing the rules and blowing the whistle. There's a little bit of admin. There's just a little bit of preparation. So hopefully we can go through all this and we'll all be as prepared as one another and make better umpires for ourselves. So firstly, this is just the junior appointments timeline. Julie gave this to me for season launch. Now, she said on Saturday, the weekend before the games, so you imagine this happening last Saturday, she needs us to put our availability in for the entire week in Officials HQ. So if you know that you're going away for the weekend, or you've got school representative sport, or you're going to an event that's been planned for months, like a wedding or a birthday party or something like that, and you know you're not going to be available the following weekend for umpiring, it would be really good if you can go into Officials HQ, and they call them leaves. Lisa has sent out an email with how to put your leaves in. It's really simple. It's just in your profile. You bring up a calendar, you say when you're not available. So we need to do that the weekend before games, because on the Sunday and Monday, that's when Julie's working on the appointments. So while we're all out there on Sunday umpiring, Julie's working on the appointments for the following week. And if we haven't put our unavailabilities in, she'll send out the draft appointments on Monday. And then she'll find out later that we're not available. So really important that if you know you've got something on in advance, put it in Officials HQ as soon as you know. Obviously, if you get sick at the last minute, that's completely different. We know that that's not a planned thing. If you get sick at the last minute, give Julie a call, give Lisa a call, or even reach out to me if you can't get onto them. So on Monday, Julie will email out the draft appointments. You would have seen that this week and last week, where we're all allocated to games. And then there's highlighted spots where she didn't have an umpire available for those spots. So if you're available for those, if you want to take an extra game, or you've missed being allocated and you're free, put your hand up, reach out to Julie and let her know what games you are available to. And you'll notice if you keep referring back to that spreadsheet that Julie sends out on Monday, that it is a Google spreadsheet, so it's live. So she'll come home from work Monday night, get a whole bunch of emails from people saying, oh, I can't do that, but I can go to that ground. And so that will change during the week. So on Tuesday, she's hoping that Tuesday and Wednesday we let her know if there's any problems, reply to her email, offer to fill in any vacant spots, and she'll continue doing her little jigsaw puzzle of all the appointments. And on Thursday, she'll publish those appointments in Officials HQ. So you'll get your email from Officials HQ on Thursday, and if you can accept your appointment as soon as possible that you have access, that would be awesome, because we need to know if you're not going to be available or if there's a problem. And then on Friday, get all those acceptances done, and Julie emails that out to the club. And again, keep an eye on that spreadsheet, because it does change all the time. And there might be, you might have seen a game that you're possibly available to do and someone was doing it, they might drop out at the last minute. So if you're available, let Julie know, and then she can fit you into any vacant spots. Any questions about Officials HQ or appointments or availabilities? Fabulous. Okay. So on game day, we would really like it if you can do your best to arrive at least 30 minutes before the game starts. It's really not that much time when you think you have to make sure you've got all your stuff. You've got your shirt. Normally with junior football, you'll arrive in your uniform, but maybe you'll want to change into your boots. Get your whistle out, make sure you've got your cards, make sure you've got a pen and paper, get all of that together. And you've got time then to go and meet the coaches, collect the team sheets from the team manager, meet the ground manager before the game, do a quick ground inspection. It's always a good idea when there's a break in the game before yours to go out in the middle, have a chat to the umpires who are doing the game before, make sure that there's no issues with the ground, no sprinkler heads, no holes, no ditches, nothing that they've had to deal with previously that might come up in your game. So use that 30 minutes to get yourself ready. Prepare yourself mentally and prepare yourself physically by having the team sheets. If there's any issues with the team sheets, which I'm going to go through a little bit later in the presentation and show you what you want to be looking for, this is your time to get it sorted out, to ask the team manager to make any corrections, to confirm the numbers, all that sort of stuff. If you're umpiring in a younger age group, familiarize yourself with the modified rules. So if you can do that in the morning before you go to footy or the night before, and then maybe have a copy of them in your umpire's bag just in case. So you can always refer back to them and just double check that you're really clear on the modified rules. I personally, I know if I'm doing under 9s or I'm doing under 11s, I always double check because they're just slightly different. And if you don't, if you're doing different modified rules each week, you want to make sure that you're double checking and being really clear. But we want all umpires to be consistent across all the games in the grade, and make sure that we're all looking after player safety. So it's important that we know those rules. When you finish your game, complete your match report and collect your pay from the canteen. So again, your match report is via Officials HQ. You need to do a match report and player votes in most age groups, except those non-competitive ones. That's 9s and possibly 11s. Lisa, if you're still here, if you can clarify those votes.
Yep. For 13s and up, so 9s and 11s don't require awards votes.
Fabulous. That's what I thought. Thank you. If you have any issues with your match report, don't just leave it. Get in contact with Lisa as soon as possible and she will assist you to get it in. It is really important that we get those, the match report and the votes in, because as most of you would know from playing footy, if you've ever come along to presentation, those votes are what we base the best and fairest awards on at the end of the season. So the league needs those votes every single week so that they can make sure that the right players are receiving the awards. If something happens during your game, something like maybe a white card was issued, maybe a team official or a player said something offensive or inappropriate to one another, to the umpires, maybe the spectators or the bench or the players were rowdy or abusive, maybe the coach said something a little bit narky to you after the game and you weren't very happy with it. Not all of these things are reportable offences, but I would urge you to put those in your match report. There's a section at the end of the match report where you can write free-form comments. It doesn't have to be a whole essay. It can just be a few notes. It's really important that we record those things. Again, it's not because it might be a reportable offence, but it might be like, say, for example, the coach said something to you or the coach was really loud and angry on the bench for the whole game and he was making complaints about the umpiring, or she. If you put that in your match report, we've got a record of it happening. And it may be that that coach does that at every game, that they're always loud and they're always angry and they're always making inappropriate comments. So if that goes in every single match report for the whole season, then throughout the season, Lisa will see that coming through on the match reports and she'll flag that with Emily and Josh or with the AFL and say, hey, our umpires keep reporting that this coach is just a little bit out of line. And then we can take steps to assist that coach and find out maybe there's something that's triggering, maybe they need some help with their coaching, but we want to make that environment as safe as possible. So anything a little bit untoward, put it in your match report, even if it seems very minor. And then everyone else will take care of it and you don't have to worry about it after that. And then just finally on this slide, I've mentioned that don't forget we have training at Tolkaba every Wednesday at 5:45. We'd love to see you there. We always have a junior session. Sometimes we team up with the senior umpires and do a joint session. If you are playing and your team trains on a Wednesday and you can't make it to training, I think there's two options there. You could maybe once a month come to umpire training instead of footy training and just let your club know that you do have commitments to both. Or alternatively, ask your coach to organise a club visit. and the umpires will come out to you. So I'll come out, Luke might come out, and we might bring a couple of other umpires out and do some drills, and maybe do a mock game with your team, and you can umpire them and get some practice that way. But that way you don't miss out on umpire training, and you still get to learn something throughout the season. Okay, so this is some team sheets that I went through. Do we have any questions before I move on to this? Going back
Nothing
to
in
the
the chat.
meeting to double check. Lovely, thank you. So Lisa asked me to cross the names out of these team sheets, just so that we weren't giving any players' names out, and because it's being recorded. But you can see where the names are. So I'm just going to point with my cursor if you can see. So on the left-hand side, firstly, we've got the players' names that are all crossed out, and you'll see that there's numbers in the left-hand column. So that's the first thing we're looking at on the team sheets, is every single player must have a Guernsey number, and they must be different. Thankfully, the team sheets now are generally printed in numerical order, so you can just go straight down the list and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and you can see that none of are duplicated. The only problems you might have, and you can see at the bottom of both these team sheets, there's some handwritten names and handwritten numbers. Now, I would guess that those players are playing up. I think this is an under 17s team sheet, and those players were playing up from under 15s. So while we would like that all players' names are printed, obviously if they're playing up to fill up numbers, they're not going to be printed. You'll also notice that I've crossed out some lines just here. Can you see my cursor when I point? Oops, sorry. Anyway, I've crossed out some lines. They must have had all their players, and then they've got some other printed players that mustn't be there that day, so they haven't allocated numbers to them, and they've just drawn lines through their names. So that's perfectly fine. If anyone's on the team sheet that's not playing, the team manager will cross them out, and they've added in the players that are playing up for numbers. So what we're looking, as I said, we're looking for no numbers are duplicated and all players are on there. And then we'll also double check how many players are actually playing the match. And that will come down again to our minimum and maximum numbers, which I'll cover off a little bit later. We need to have a minimum number of players, and there is a maximum number of players you can have on the team sheet, and it varies throughout the grades. And so we need to be checking that and making sure that we're asking the question of coaches. If, for example, one team's got 24 players and the other team's got 17 players, we're going to be asking, are you going to be evening up? Are you going to be sharing players? Because the whole point of the game is participation. We really don't want 6 players sitting on the bench and rotating through when another team's short. We want everyone to have maximum participation, and we cover that off in the bylaws a bit later on. So the other thing I've put arrows next to here are the coaches' names. So your coach should always be printed on the team sheet. If the coach is handwritten, maybe it's a technical issue on the day. And you'll certainly see that over the next couple of weeks, but come round 5 or 6, you shouldn't be. They should be all printed names for the coach, because the only way the coach can be on the team sheet is if they have the proper accreditation. Now, this is one of those things that we don't actually have to worry about. We should take note of it. We might want to mention it in our team sheet, but all we want to do is upload a copy of the team sheet with our match report, and the people who check the match reports will see that that coach's name is handwritten, and they will follow up on it. Then you might have an assistant coach, you might have a team manager, and for the older age groups, sort of over 12s and 13s, you'll have a team runner and a water carrier. So if you receive a team sheet and it doesn't have a water carrier and a runner, double check with the coach or the team manager if they're going to have someone in those roles, because if they're going to have those people doing those jobs, they have to be on the team sheet. The other thing you'll notice on this team sheet that I selected randomly this morning, but I'm quite happy with it. On the left-hand team sheet, the team manager's name has been crossed out and then handwritten as a runner. And that's because when I did this game last year, the assistant manager was going to do the role of the assistant coach was going to be the assistant coach and the runner. And the bylaws are very specific that you cannot have those two roles. No one on the coaching team can be a runner or a water carrier. And the reason for that is because then they're basically got the opportunity to be on the field coaching. So I've given this gentleman the benefit of the doubt. He's crossed himself out as assistant coach, and he's acting as the runner instead. Ideally, we shouldn't be agreeing to that. He is the assistant coach. He shouldn't be running messages. But I must have been feeling nice that day. Any questions about team sheets?
Yeah, I have a question. When you put the team sheets into the match report, there's only one file, only room for one file.
Yeah, so you can see in the photo that I've got here, this actually, Lars, is my photo from a match last year.
Yeah.
Put your two team sheets side by side and pull your camera back and take it side on.
Yeah. I've tried to do that a couple of times, but a couple of times I haven't had time, and
yeah, or you can try and overlap them a bit. I actually got caught out on the weekend. I took two separate photos because I forgot.
Yeah.
And I ended up, one had handwritten stuff on it and one was printed perfectly. So I uploaded the photo that had the handwriting on it.
Yeah.
Because I figured that was the one that was most likely to have errors in it and need to be uploaded. But remember too, the ground manager gets a copy of these, the timekeeper gets a copy of these, and the teams exchange them as well.
Yeah.
So the copy we upload in our report, it's not the only copy, and if it doesn't get uploaded, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would err on the if you've only got one photo, put the one that you think might be more important to include.
Yep.
Or include the second one instead of the scorecard.
Yep.
Because again, the scorecards, it's okay if you don't upload it.
Yep.
Or write a note in your match report saying, I couldn't get a photo of it.
Yep.
Like, I always think when I take this photo like this that it mustn't be very clear, but obviously when you zoom into it, it's really not too bad.
Yeah. All good. Thank you.
No worries.
Just another thing with the team sheets. What I like to do before a game is to make sure everyone's turned up, or if they're waiting for players to turn up, just to make sure that we don't have players on the team sheet that are or aren't playing, just for eligibility for finals and stuff as well. Because you've got to play, I think it's a minimum of 4 home and away matches to be eligible to play finals. And this is just one way of keeping that record for us.
As a technicality, the bylaws say that if the player is not present, they cannot be included in the team sheet. But I think trying to enforce that it's difficult at best, and we need to work on a bit of an honesty system. But if it's a player that hasn't turned up and they do turn up before halftime, their name can be added at halftime. But anyone turns up after halftime can't play because they can't be added in. So this is the modified rules. This is prior to any spell checks from, I don't know who did this, but they're embarrassing spell checks. And I'll flip through. There's two pages. So basically, so this is boys. It tells you what size ball you need. It tells you how long the quarters are. I never worry too much about the zones. I think that's about the clubs. But it does cover off your team numbers, your on-field numbers, your maximum and minimum numbers. It tells you whether you can have runners or trainers on the field. So you can see with under nines, they're not allowed on the field because the coach is on the ground. Marking contests. So under nines and under 10s, any distance shows control. They don't actually have to mark the ball and hold it so long as they show control. Under 11s and under 12s is a 10-meter catch, not a 15-meter. Under 9s and 10s, wrap tackle only, no tackling till the ground. And then these next few are really important when you're doing under nines. There is no bumping, there's no shepherding, there's no pushing, there's no smothering, no fending off, no stealing the ball, no kicking off the ground, no mercy rule, no scoring. And there's a maximum 1 bounce. So those things are really, really important to be on top of when you're doing those age groups, because we don't want mum and dad on the sideline watching this game and thinking, oh, that's a really rough game for my 7-year-old. One of the things I have seen occasionally is coaches getting a little bit excited on the field and going, hey, shepherd it, little Johnny. If you notice something like that, I would talk to the ground manager at quarter time and say, hey, I've noticed the coach is coaching them to shepherd. It's not allowed in this age group. Can you have a quick chat to him? That's probably much better than shifting your focus from the game to telling the coach what he can't be doing during the game. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no.
That's okay. Then there's sort of no full possession in the ball ups for quite a few age groups, and that's to do with height differences. You might end up having rucks who are ones that are quite a bit taller than the others, so they have to tap it away. And we're also trying to teach these younger kids how to tap the ball away in a ruck. So it's a skill thing too. We don't want them catching the football, not playing netball. The distance penalty is 25 metres in quite a few of these age groups. There's no deliberate rush behind, and there's no deliberate out of bounds or insufficient intent. In other words, poorly spelt. That's really sad. Then we go on to the youth girls. Very similar as far as, free kicks for deliberate rush behinds, insufficient intent. Just go back. Under 15s and under 17s boys are the only exceptions on those last 2 points. I would say that no one's ever paid a deliberate rush behind in community football in juniors. And I couldn't imagine any situation where you would. Insufficient intent, absolutely you can. So anyway, I'm not going to go through every single point in these ones, but they are in, Elisa sent them out a couple of weeks ago. We'll send out this slideshow as well. And as soon as I get the properly spelt copy, I'll make sure that that's issued to everyone, because this very much upsets me. Sorry, I'm really pedantic about spelling. So it's a silly thing. Any questions about modified rules?
Nothing in the chat.
Lovely. Okay, so is everyone aware that we have bylaws in the competition? We have junior bylaws and we have senior bylaws. And what they are, they're a set of rules that govern the competition. So on top of the laws of the game, these are laws that are specific to our competition. It's like an 125-page document, and you do not need to read all of it. There's a few sections that I have marked in my hard copy that I would look at pretty regularly. It's a good thing to download on your phone, or if you don't want to do that, if you need to refer to the bylaws at a game at any time, ask your ground manager. They will have a copy of it and you can double check. So the first one I've highlighted as being important to us is the number of players in a team, which I mentioned earlier. This spreadsheet gives us the minimum numbers of a player for a match. So this first column is under nines cannot play a match with less than 6 players per team. Under 17s boys must have a minimum of 12 players per team or they cannot play the match. So any game that goes ahead with numbers less than that would be a scratch match. And that's why we check the number of players on the team sheet at the beginning of the game, because we want to make sure that we've got the minimum players. Then we go across to the maximum players on the team sheet, the maximum players on the field, the match number. and the maximum registrations per team. So the maximum registrations per team is the maximum number of players that you can have listed on the team sheet. You cannot have more than 15 under nines players on your team sheet and just be choosing for some of them to play. They simply cannot be on the team sheet. And the ideal match number is 9. So summarized it on the next page, and I think I've snipped a little bit on the following page from the team sheet. So the team will forfeit the match if they do not have the minimum number of players. During school holidays, we reduce that minimum number by 2 because there's more likely to be kids away and we still want to be able to play football. So all of those numbers are less by 2. The on-field player numbers in junior football must be even at all times except where there's been a send-off, or when the coach has declined to even up or the mercy rule has been applied. And that means too that the teams must even up if there's an injury. So if you're umpiring a game and you've got the absolute minimum, so let's say you're doing an under 13s team, you've got 12 players on the field, which is the minimum. Both teams have got 12 on the field. That's not a good example. Sorry. I'll start again. Let's say we've got the match number of 15 for an under 13s. Both teams have got 15 on the field and someone gets injured and has to go off. Then you need to make sure that the opposing team takes a player off as well. So then we would go down to 14. If you go below that minimum numbers, that's a whole other story. So we might skip past that. But just be aware of it. If they're playing right on the edge of the numbers and there's no one on the bench, if someone gets injured, make sure the other team takes someone off. Most of the time, the coaches and the team managers will manage that, but it doesn't hurt to be aware of it if you can have an awareness of it. Buddy, sorry, my dog's being naughty. So on the next page, I've actually snipped a little bit of the bylaws about the even up rule, which I'll let you read in your own time, but it's about clubs borrowing teams to make up to that match number. So if they've got one team's got the minimum number and one's got the maximum number, in some grades they must even up to the match number. In some grades, we encourage them to even up to the match number. If you get this situation in your games, talk to the team managers, talk to the ground manager. Often coaches don't like to borrow players from other teams, which I understand, but at the same time, this is all about maximum participation, and we really do urge them to take it, to share players. So if you have this occur, if you're not sure, feel free to give Lisa a call or have a chat to your ground manager. But if you feel that the players weren't evened up appropriately, just record it in your match report. Let them play the match. Don't get stressed about it. Don't try and make them change their mind if they don't want to swap players. Just make a note of it in your match report so that we know that it happened. And at the end of the day, if they get to play a game of football, that's awesome. This one's a bit random out of nowhere. If you've got a spare football behind the goals, we don't let players just pick up the spare football and kick it in from a behind unless we cannot find the football. We have to stop and wait for the football to be retrieved. So places like Cardiff, Warners Bay, where sometimes it goes behind the fence and in the bush, we have to go and get the footy. They can't just take the shortcut and pick up the spare ball and keep playing. They have to go and find the football. And also, unlike what you see at top level AFL on the television, players cannot play on when you're advancing them 50 metres. When you give a 50-metre penalty, advance them 50, stop time, advance 50, restart time, set the mark, and then they can play on. They cannot play on during that advancing the 25-metre or 50-metre penalty. Questions?
Nothing in the chat.
Lovely. So mercy rule procedure. This is one people always, well, I find often the ground managers and the goal umpires and the coaches, they're never quite sure exactly what to do with mercy rule procedure. But there is definitely a set procedure. We wait till the end of the quarter so that the goal umpires can check the score. So even if they've reached the margin of 60 or 90 points and they keep scoring and keep scoring and keep scoring during the quarter, let it keep going. We confirm the score at the end of the quarter with the goal umpires. So for under 13s and below, that's 60 points. Under 14s and above, it's 90 points. Once we've confirmed that score, the ground manager will go and stop scoring and they'll readjust that score. So, for example, it's an under 15s game. They've reached the 90-point margin and they've kept scoring in the third quarter and the score says 112-0. When the ground manager goes off the field after the quarter break, he will readjust that score to say 90-0. So it won't remain on the scoreboard. The goal umpires are to continue to score the match as usual. So they will keep waving the flags, they'll keep recording the score on their scorecards, and they'll submit the scorecards to the ground manager at the end of the match. So that's another one that you'll need to double check that the goal umpires are aware of when you have a mercy rule, is that they know they have to keep scoring because often they think they can stop. You will note on your match report which quarter the mercy rule came into effect, and the coaches of both teams are responsible for evening up to improve the competitive balance of the game. So sometimes they'll swap players, but I think the mercy rule is written now as it's written on the screen, preferably by increasing the trailing team by +2 players. So it might be that the team that's losing has lots of players on the bench, so they might let at least two of those come out. It might be that the winning team gives some players to the losing teams. It really is, as it says here, it's up to the coaches. We need to make sure that they have evened up. And if there's any problem with them evening up, write it in your match report. Say the coaches wouldn't share players, or the coaches wouldn't even up, or the coaches wanted to keep playing as it was. It doesn't happen very often, but if it does, definitely write it in your match report. Okay, this is, any questions about the mercy rule? Okay, so prohibited attire and undergarments. I'm going to skip to the next slide because I described what undergarments. So this is again the section of the bylaws. It says that players in under 9 matches can wear full-length compression garments, arms and legs. That's mainly because they play so early in the morning and it tends to be a bit cold. It says it's preferable that they be beige or the same colour as their club shorts. It's preferable. Don't stress about it. If they're a different colour, don't worry about it. It's fine. So undergarments worn under shorts, and this is in all other grades, must be skin tone black or the same colour as club shorts, and must not be longer than the top of the knee. And undergarments worn under the jersey must be sleeveless unless the jumper being worn is long sleeves or the undergarment is the same colour as the jersey. The only exemption from that, sometimes people need to wear long garments for medical reasons or for religious reasons, in which case they would have a letter from the CMC, as the Competition Management Committee. So anyone who's in that category where they feel very strongly that they have to wear long sleeves or long pants for some reason, they would have had this conversation with their club, they would have applied to the CMC, they will have a letter. So if that occurs, the team manager will show you the letter and it's fine. So I'm going to go back to the other one about other prohibited attire. So what we want to be looking out for too is kids wearing t-shirts under their sleeveless Guernsey or long sleeve shirts that aren't skins. As you'll notice when it said about under nines wearing skins, they have to be compression garments. And that's because we don't want kids grabbing loose shirts and being able to use those to hold players. So if you see kids in t-shirts or long sleeve shirts and they're not right compression gear, just when you're doing your boot check and your nail check at the beginning of the game, really politely ask them to go and take them off. Everyone knows that football boots may not have metal stops. That's a nice simple one. I didn't know that they couldn't wear runners or sneakers rather than football boots, so that was interesting. But runners and sneakers not permitted. Hats, caps, beanies, not permitted. Gloves are not permitted unless medically required and approved by the CMC. So again, if you've got a kid wearing a glove, they should have a letter from the league saying, little Mary hurt her hand, she has to wear a glove for 6 weeks. She's allowed to wear a glove for games. Wristbands are not permitted. Bobby pins are not permitted. I don't get that, but it's a thing. Jewelry must be removed unless it is permanently fixed. So no one is allowed to tape their jewelry. It just is not safe in a contact sport. Anyone who's taping their earrings or taping their nose rings or any other rings, they're putting themselves in a situation where if they get tackled the wrong way, that could get ripped out in a tackle regardless of the tape. So we've made it the rule that jewelry is not allowed. We have a lot of issues with clubs not agreeing with this rule. So if you have anyone in your games who is wearing jewelry and they choose to tape it, you explain to them that this is the rule. They have to apply to the CMC to be able to wear that jewelry. They must have a letter to say they're allowed to wear it. And if they don't have those and they still choose to play, we are going to take down their number and write it in our match report that they wore jewelry and they chose to wear it and tape it. And I need you to be really firm on this one. It is a dangerous thing. We're not just being horrible. We're not being mean. We are concerned for people's welfare. So we need them to take their earrings and their nose rings out. Or we will put it in the match report. And then again, once it's in the match report, it's not our problem. We've recorded it, we've reported it to the right people. Other people will then take it up with the club and have a conversation with them. And over time, if we keep being firm on this, in future years, we'll see people will stop wearing jewelry and we'll have a much safer competition. Spectacles must meet safety requirements and be reported to the CMC. Personally, I think that one's a little bit vague. I don't know of very many kids who wear spectacles in footy. If you were unsure, I'd have a conversation with the ground manager about it.
There is one more I just wanted to note on that one.
Yeah.
In the past couple of seasons, we've had some players who have been hard of hearing and have had at times needed to wear a cochlear implant. So in those cases, they would also have a letter from the CMC and they also wear headgear to keep it on and in place for safety reasons as well. And if that happens,
Sorry, you go ahead.
If that happens, it's typically like a whole season thing. So you typically only need to see the letter once and then you sort of know it ongoing. Yeah, it's just happened a couple of times over the past few seasons in my experience.
I find anything like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the team manager or the coach is likely to come to you and tell you about it. That's one of those ones where they're very forthcoming and they'll come to you at the beginning and say, hey, we've got a player who's got this.
Yeah, similar with color blindness as well, when they may need to use a yellow footy.
Yeah. So coaches will be very helpful with that sort of stuff and tell you up front. So yeah, just work with them, and we always do the best we can to help people to participate, really. Questions? Okay, runners and water carriers. I was at Warners Bay on the weekend, and every single game I watched, I had to ask the runner and the water carrier the ground manager to ask the water carrier and the runner to leave the field and stop coaching. These people are not there to coach. They are not there to linger on the field. We are the only people who are allowed on the field to watch the game up close. Everyone else goes on the sideline. So the runner, who would be wearing a pink shirt preferably, his job or her job is to deliver messages to the players, messages from the coach, and to leave the field immediately. So you want them to go back to the bench because that's where they have to get their messages from. They're not going to come on, deliver a message, run off to the far side where there's no bench, and then come back on with another message because they haven't got it from the coach. They go back to the bench. They don't have to go through the interchange, but they do need to go back and get their next message from the coach. The water carrier's job is to deliver water and leave the field. Water carriers will linger a little bit. I wouldn't stress about it unless they're getting in the way of play or you feel like they've been standing there for so long and they haven't delivered water and they're just spectating. Totally at your discretion, that one. So the runners and water carriers, they must be on the team sheet. They don't need to use the interchange. They must remain a reasonable distance from play at all times. We can award free kicks to the opposition team if the runner or water carrier is interfering with play or too close to play. I don't like doing that because I don't think it's fair to the kids, but there's sometimes when it's just absolutely necessary because these adults who are helping are not helping and they're just hindering. And so a free kick might be the way to teach them to keep their distance. Your runners and water carriers should be over the 14 or 13 years of age. If you're not sure, don't worry about it too much. That's something that in senior football we're a little bit more careful of just because the players are a little bit bigger and the play's a bit faster. But unless you've got a 6-year-old running water and it's really obvious that they're not 13, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Your water carriers and runners may not be suspended, stood down, or a deregistered player or official. I looked into this one just recently. There is nothing we can do to know if someone is suspended or stood down, deregistered, unless you were the person who happened to report them and you know from tribunal that they're serving a 3-week ban. You've got no way of knowing. Make sure their name's on the team sheet, and that's where your responsibility on that last point ends. If their name's on the team sheet and they happen to be suspended, it will get picked up when the team sheets get read at a higher level. So don't worry about that one too much. The main thing is to be consistent in your message and don't let them linger and don't let them coach. So you don't want runners coming onto the field to deliver a message to Max and then stop and the play changes and all of a sudden the runner's yelling, set up, you go down there, you go down there. His message was for Max, he's delivered his message, he needs to leave the field and not coach. Questions? If the coaches or the team managers or the water carriers or the runners say to you, I've done it every other week, that is bad luck. They're not doing it anymore. Just say no. These are the rules. Be firm. Be strong. This next one, I mentioned that earlier when we were going over the team sheets. Anyone who's listed as a coach or assistant coach cannot take any other team official roles. So they can't run water, they can't be the runner, they can't do first aid, and they can't be a trainer. And that first aid one's really important. It was mentioned just recently. I can't remember where I was. We want our first aid people to be concentrating on the game. We don't want them to be laying out jerseys. We don't want them to be recording goals or behinds or anything else. We need first aid people to be watching the game for injuries and to be ready when there's an injury to deliver first aid. So if you're ever in a situation where you see that the first aid person is multitasking for a team, mention it to the ground manager and just very politely say, hey, do you think maybe this person should be concentrating on first aid and not doing multitasking? This again is just an example from the bylaws about the number of officials allowed on the bench. I wouldn't stress about it too much. Just wanted to give you an example of where it is in the bylaws and what it says. 1 head coach, 2 assistant coaches, a team manager, trainers, first aid, runners, whatever. And this might actually be the last one. We might finish early. Has anyone ever had an injured player on the field and the trainer comes out and goes, umpire, stop the game, umpire, stop the game? Okay. If there is an injured player on the field, don't stop the game. We don't stop the game in juniors. We don't stop the game in seniors unless we are calling for a stretcher. In junior football, the clock does not get stopped. There's no time on. So if there's someone injured and we do have to stop the time, stop the game, the time continues until it runs out. So what we recommend that you do, if there is an injured player, be aware of where they are, keep an eye on what's going on, and if play continues and the ball gets kicked and the players start to come to where the injured player is, stop the game then. Stop it and move it away and ball it up somewhere else, or stop it and find out if we're going to be able to get the player moved in the foreseeable future. So the only time we're stopping the game for an injured player is if play comes too close and it's dangerous, or if your runner or your first aid asks for a stretcher. As soon as they ask for a stretcher, stop the game. And then we're stopped until the stretcher comes and takes the player off. So when that happens, take note of where the ball was and who was in possession. It's not a bad idea to put the ball down at the spot that it was at and even stand with it there, because you don't need to be helping with the first aid or with the teams. And in the older age groups, we generally urge the players to go off into their huddles just so that they don't niggle one another. In some age groups, that's not necessary. If it's a girls' game, they generally like to have a bit of a social chat if the game gets stopped. Unless you think that the players are going to start a fight if they don't separate into their huddles, don't stress about that too much. That's it. That's all I have. I do have other videos, but I might save them for next time because we've only got a few minutes left and we don't want to get into a whole going through holding the ball with 8 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope it wasn't too boring just listening to me talk for 40 minutes. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Lisa or to myself or to Jess on the Central Coast. We're all here to help, and we are quite happy to help you anytime you